Hey everyone, this is Chrissy with Tackling the Giants. This video is part 3 of the series called The Complete Gospel. And before I get into this part, I'm wanting to make some corrections from part 2. And I want to tell everyone that I appreciate the people that that pointed these errors out. I'm not sure what happened there. I guess I was just typing too quickly, but I am a person and I make mistakes just like everybody else. So please don't hesitate if you see something that you think might be wrong in a video or whatever. Please don't hesitate to point it out, and I will correct it and try to let everybody know. So I appreciate that. So let's go over the mistakes that were in part 2. So it was regarding the story of Joseph, and for some reason I had put that Joseph was favored by his father Isaac. Okay, now Isaac is actually it's Abraham, Isaac, and then it's Jacob. So you have Isaac is Jacob's father. So Isaac is actually Joseph's grandfather. Okay, so it should have said Joseph was favored by his father Jacob. Okay, and Jacob is also known as Israel. Remember, he was renamed Israel. So he received a coat of many colors, and his brothers were jealous. He also had dreams that showed his family would bow down to him. His brothers ended up betraying him by putting him into a pit to die. However, they ended up selling him, and he wound up in Egypt. They put goat's blood on the coat of many colors, and they brought it to Jacob to make him think that he died. And he ended up being falsely accused by his master's wife of trying to commit adultery with her. He refused, and when he tried to run away, he left his clothing and used this, and this was what was used against him. That his clothing, she had his clothing. So I accidentally put that his clothing was ripped, and that's a mistake. And I think that might actually be a bigger mistake than what I realized. For some reason, I don't know, that was in my head, and it might be because I think that's what happens in like a video of the story of Joseph, a children's video. I think that happened. I might be mistaken, but maybe that's why it's in my head. But the reason why it's very important, and then we have to be careful with that with videos and stuff like that, is that, when they're mistaken. But the reason why I say that I think that that is so significant of a thing to point out is because, Joseph is a picture of Yeshua. And so, Joseph's coat of many colors can be likened to, in a sense, of the high priest garments, who are made up of, the twined scarlet and the twined blue and white and everything. And so it's like kind of like a coat of many colors in a sense. And Yeshua is our high priest in heaven. And, the garment's not to be ripped. So a tunic was to be woven to where it couldn't be ripped. And that's also why, it points to how whenever he was on, they didn't rip his clothes. They decided not to rip them, and they parted, they drew lots to see who received his garments. So, it's interesting thing to point out. And also the high priest, who was actually serving in the temple during Yeshua, he ripped his garments, and he basically kind of like, in a sense, disqualified himself from being high priest when he did that, right? Because the garments aren't supposed to be ripped, but he did that whenever he accused Yeshua of blasphemy. So anyways, that's kind of like a sidetrack thing, but I think that that's really significant in the spiritual realm and shadow pictures and things, that it was not ripped. Okay, so moving on. He was taken to prison, but God gave him favor, and he was put in charge of all the prisoners. While he was in prison, the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt offended him and were also cast into prison. So now I'm going to actually move on to part 3, but I just wanted to clarify that for you guys, and thank y'all for pointing that out. Okay, so on to Moses. So the midwives were ordered to kill all the male babies. Now this is so let me back up a little bit. So we ended with Joseph here, who was favored by Pharaoh, and then all the people, all the Israelites ended up coming, and like I said, the brothers and everything bowed down, and then they got the land of Goshen, and they were all taken care of and everything. And then the prophecies and of the children of Israel were foretold by Jacob whenever he got to see him and everything. And what ended up happening was they ended up being they multiplied and there became, new Pharaoh, and that ended up not knowing Joseph, okay, because Joseph had died, and they got taken into slavery because the Egyptians thought that there were too many of them and that they might turn on them. Okay, so this is where we pick up with the order to kill all the male babies. Okay, so the midwives helped the Israelites to deliver the babies, and they were ordered to kill all the male babies. However, the midwives feared God, and one of the babies which was saved was Moses, and his mom took care of him until she could no longer hide him anymore, and then she put him in the basket and she placed him in the Nile River, and Moses' sister Miriam watched over him and saw when Pharaoh's daughter found him in the basket. And Miriam went and she asked if she would like her to find someone that could nurse him for her. And, Pharaoh's daughter said, yeah. So she went and she told their own mom, okay? And Pharaoh's daughter actually offered to pay Moses' own mother, Jochebed, to nurse him for her. And as soon as Moses got older and began to see his own people in slavery, he attempted to help them. And he ended up killing one of the Egyptians and had fled to the desert. And he was sent by God later, within the desert, to redeem Israel from Egypt. So I wanted to just go over real quick the plagues from Egypt. Once this is... So obviously, I think a lot of you are familiar with the story, but Pharaoh, just a real quick summary, Pharaoh refused to let them go, and slowly, these plagues were given out one at a time until the very last one, which was the death of the firstborn of those that didn't have the blood of the lamb on their doorposts. And this is where we get Passover, which is coming up. So I just want to put these in here, and you can see how this kind of, when you read Revelations, you'll see that the plagues are poured out on the world, which is Babylon, like spiritual Babylon, throughout the entire world, and how God's judgment is going to be poured out upon the world during the second Exodus that's coming up, that he promises, where you won't say that, Israel was taken just out of Egypt, but from the ends of the earth where he scattered them, okay? So it's very significant because it goes hand in hand. So after they finally left from Egypt and they were freed after the firstborn death, and he let them go, after the miraculous delivery with plagues and the splitting of the Red Sea from Egypt, Israel wandered in the wilderness for 40 years before they were able to inherit the promised land. Throughout their journey, they received the 10 Commandments from Moses on Mount Sinai. They built the tabernacle, consecrated priests, defeated their enemies, were provided with food and water from God, and still had trouble trusting in God and obeying his statutes, ordinances, and commandments. When Moses came down from the mountain, they were already worshiping a golden calf. Moses ended up setting up judges to help with justice and ruling, and those who rebelled against Moses were bitten by snakes. You can see the story in Numbers 21, 4-9. And they were also swallowed by the opening of the earth in Numbers 16, 20-35. And that's the story of Korah and the rebellion. Moses interceded on behalf of Israel many times. Moses is a shadow picture of the Messiah, Yeshua. Moses, interceded on behalf of Israel, just as Yeshua intercedes on behalf of us. He delivered God's people from slavery, just as Yeshua delivered us from the slavery of the Egyptian Babylonian system, the beastly system. We're freed from the doctrine of men, lies, and deceit, as we are presented with the truth of God. However, as much as Moses did for Israel, he disobeyed God by hitting the rock again when he was told to just speak to it. This was a huge deal because the rock was a shadow picture of Yeshua being struck and water, the word of God, flowing out. Therefore, Moses was forbidden to enter the promised land, and the only ones who were actually able to enter into the land that was left from the Exodus from Egypt was Joshua and Caleb. And Joshua is the English, and his original name was Hoshea, and it he changed it to, God changed it to YEHOSHUA, and then, which means Jehovah saves. And then we have in the after Babylonian captivity, we see that name YEHOSHUA is referred to as Yeshua, and that's where we get the shortened form of the name Yeshua. Okay. So moving on, when they were about to enter into the promised land, This is regarding the blessings and life or death and curses. And the covenant of God, keeping his Torah, keeping his word, is promises of blessing and life. And if you disobey, there's death and curses. And this is going to come and play with the gospel. So how YEHOSHUA took upon the curse upon us. Okay, so this is very important to put in here. So I want you guys to pay attention to this, and we'll get into that later, probably into the next part, as in wrapping this all up to where it makes sense. So in Deuteronomy 11, it says, "Behold, I set before you this day a blessing and a curse. A blessing if you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you this day, and a curse if you will not obey the commandments of the Lord your God, but turn aside out of the way which I command you this day, to go after other gods which you have not known. And it will come to pass, when the Lord your God has brought you into the land where you go to possess it, that you shall put the blessing upon Mount Gerizim and the curse upon Mount Ebal. Are they not on the other side of Jordan, by the way where the sun goes down, in the land of the Canaanites, which dwell in the champaign over against Gilgal, beside the plains of Moreh? For you shall pass over Jordan to go in to possess the land which the Lord your God gives you, and you shall possess it and dwell therein. And you shall observe to do all the statutes and judgments which I set before you this day." Now, I'm going to probably do another video on they actually found the curses tablets at Mount Ebal recently, like I believe within the last few days, maybe last week or so. And I think that's very significant, because I believe that's a statement to the world about impending judgment, about those who refuse to keep the statutes. But anyway, so like I said, this all ties in, and so it's very interesting though that they found that, and it's just a testimony again to the truth of God's word. Okay, and then in Deuteronomy 30, it says, "And it'll come to pass, when all these things are come upon you, the blessing and the curse, which I have set before you, and you shall call them to mind among all the nations where the Lord your God has driven you." Okay, so this is foreshadowing. Okay, so Moses is saying this to the Israelites before he's turning everything over to Joshua, because again, Moses wasn't allowed to enter in, and he ended up going up on the mountain and dying. Okay, so he's telling the people, basically, I know that you're going to do these things, and I know that you're going to, commit idolatry and forsake this covenant. And, so you're going to incur these curses, and you're going to be driven among the nations. Okay, so this was a plea that he had to them. He said, when you call these to mind, when you're among the nations where the Lord has driven you, and it says, "And shall return unto the Lord your God, and shall obey his voice, according to all that I command you this day, you and your children, with all your heart and with all your soul, that then the Lord your God will turn your captivity and have compassion upon you, and will return and gather you from all the nations where the Lord your God has scattered you." So this isn't completely done yet, okay? We don't have the complete fulfillment of this yet. YEHOSHUA is the one, the Messiah is the one who gathers all of Israel, okay, together. And even the Jews know that this isn't fulfilled yet, okay? Even though they might not accept YEHOSHUA, they know that the Messiah is going to gather up all of Israel, okay? So we have, well, I'm going to go into that part later, how we had the United Kingdom and the divided kingdom, okay? So I'll save that for then. But this is very important, that this is a future event, okay? In what he's telling us is that in order for this to happen, for him to return Israel's captivity, is that we have to obey his voice, okay? So it says, if any of you, excuse me, verse 4, "If any of you are driven out to the utmost parts of heaven, from where the Lord your God gathers you, and from there he will fetch you. And the Lord your God will bring you into the land which your fathers possessed, and you shall possess it, and he will do you good and multiply you above your fathers. And the Lord your God will circumcise your heart and the heart of your seed to love the Lord with all your heart and with all your soul, that you may live." Now remember, YEHOSHUA quoted that and said that that's the greatest of all commandments, okay? And that's kind of a summary of everything, to love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul. is to keep the commandments of God, okay? And the circumcision of your heart is a promise of the new covenant in Jeremiah chapter 31, where he writes the Torah upon our hearts and that we will walk in his ways, okay? So it says, the Lord your God will put all these curses on your enemies and on them that hate you, which persecuted you. And you shall return and obey the voice of the Lord and do all his commandments, which I command you this day. And the Lord your God will make you plenteous in every work of your hand, in the fruit of your body, in the fruit of your cattle, in the fruit of your land, for good. For the Lord will again rejoice over you for good, as he rejoiced over your fathers. If you shall hearken unto the voice of the Lord your God to keep his commandments and his statutes, which are written in this book of the Torah, and if you turn unto the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul. The reason I read Torah is just because a lot of people see law and they don't realize that word, the Hebrew word, is Torah, and Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible, okay? So it continues, it says, for this commandment which I command you this day is not hidden from you, neither is it far off. It is not in heaven that you should say, who shall go up for us to heaven and bring it to us that we may hear it and do it? Neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, who shall go over the sea for us and bring it to us that we may hear it and do it? But the word is very near unto you, in your mouth and in your heart, that you may do it. See, I have set before you this day life and good, death and evil. And that I command you this day to love the Lord your God, to walk in his ways, to keep his commandments, his statutes, and his judgments, that you may live and multiply. And the Lord your God shall bless you in the land wherever you go to possess it. But if you turn your heart away so that you will not hear, but shall be drawn away and worship other gods and serve them, I denounce you this day, and you shall surely perish, and that you shall not prolong your days upon the land where you pass over the Jordan to possess it. I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that you and your seed may live, that you may love the Lord your God, and that you may obey his voice, and that you may cleave unto him, for he is your life and the length of your days, and that you may dwell in the land which the Lord swore unto your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give them. Okay, so and then in Deuteronomy 31, Joshua, who's renamed YEHOSHUA, takes over for Moses. So I just wanted to go over that real quick. It says, Moses went and spoke these words to Israel, and he said to them, I am 120 years old this day. I cannot go out and come in. Also, the Lord has said to me, you shall not go over this Jordan. This is a lot of scripture, but it's really important. So just bear with me because this is all going to make sense in probably the last video where it's wrapped up, and you'll see how all of these things tie together. So verse 3, the Lord your God, he will go before you and will destroy these nations from before you, and you shall possess them. And Joshua, he shall go over before you, as the Lord has said. And the Lord shall do unto them as he did to Sihon and to Og, king of the Amorites, and unto the land of them whom he destroyed. And the Lord shall give them up before your face, that you may do unto them according unto all the commandments which I have commanded you. Be strong and of a good courage, fear not, nor be afraid of them. For the Lord your God, he it is that does go with you. He will not fail you nor forsake you. And Moses called to Joshua and said to him in the sight of all Israel, be strong and of good courage, for you must go with the people unto the land which the Lord has sworn unto their fathers to give them, and you shall cause them to inherit it. And the Lord, he it is that goes before you. He will be with you. He will not fail you nor forsake you. Do not fear or neither be dismayed. And Moses wrote this law, the Torah, and delivered it to the priests and the sons of Levi, which bore the ark of the covenant of Jehovah, and unto all the elders of Israel. And Moses commanded them, saying, at the end of every 7 years, in the solemnity of the year of release, in the feast of tabernacles, when all Israel comes to appear before the Lord your God in the place which ye shall choose, you shall read this Torah before all Israel in their hearing. Gather the people together, men and women, children, the stranger that's within your gates, and that they may hear, and that they may learn and fear the Lord your God, and observe and do all the words of this Torah. And that their children, which have not known anything, may hear and learn to fear the Lord your God, as long as you live in the land where you go over to possess it. And the Lord said to Moses, behold, your days approach that you must die. Call Joshua and present yourselves in the tabernacle of the congregation, that I may give him charge. And Moses and Joshua went and presented themselves. And the Lord appeared in the tabernacle in a pillar of a cloud, and the pillar of a cloud stood over the door of the tabernacle. And the Lord said to Moses, behold, you shall sleep with your fathers, and these people will rise up, and they will go whoring after other gods of the strangers of the land where they go to be among them, and they will forsake me and break my covenant which I have made with them. Then my anger shall be kindled against them in that day, and I will forsake them, and I will hide my face from them, and they shall be devoured, and many evils and troubles shall befall them, so that they will say in that day, are not these evils come upon us because our God is not among us? And I will surely hide my face in that day for all the evils which they have wrought, and that they are turned to other gods. Now therefore write this song, and teach it to the children of Israel, put it in their mouths, that this song may be a witness for me against the children of Israel. For when I shall have brought them into the land which I swore unto their fathers that flows with milk and honey, and they shall have eaten and filled themselves and waxen fat, then they will turn to other gods and serve them and provoke me and break my covenant. So I did a video on the covenant in Daniel 9:27, the covenant with many fulfilled. And this is the reason why Yeshua had to come and he confirmed the covenant. This is the covenant that was broken, and this is the covenant. Yeshua is the messenger of the covenant, okay? But let's continue. So it says, and it shall come to pass, when many evils and troubles are befallen them, that this song shall testify against them as a witness, for it shall not be forgotten out of the mouths of their seed. For I know their imagination that they go about, even now, before I have brought them into the land which I swore. Moses therefore wrote this song the same day and taught it to the children of Israel. And he gave Joshua the son of Nun a charge, and he said, be strong and of good courage, for you shall bring the children of Israel into the land which I swore to them, and I will be with you. And it came to pass, when Moses had made an end of writing the words of the Torah in a book until they were finished, he commanded the Levites, which wore the Ark of the Covenant, and he said, take this book of the Torah and put it in the side of the Ark of the Covenant of Jehovah your God, that it may be there for a witness against you. Now, so I just think that also it's prophetic and a shadow picture that the person who ends up bringing the people into the land has the same name as the Messiah, okay, Yeshua, that's going to be bringing the second Exodus people into the land, okay? So let's continue. Let's see, where was I? Okay, so verse 27, he says, for I know your rebellion, you are stiff-necked. Behold, while I am yet alive with you this day, you have been rebellious against the Lord, and how much more after my death. Gather unto me all the elders of your tribes and your officers, that I may speak these words in their ears, and call heaven and earth to record against them. For I know that after my death you will utterly corrupt yourselves, and turn aside from the way which I have commanded you, and evil will befall you in the latter days, because you will do evil in the sight of the Lord, to provoke him to anger through the work of your hands. And Moses spoke in the ears of all the congregation of Israel the words of this song until they were ended. Okay, so that's going to be it for part 3. I'm sorry that this has taken me so long to get out. I'm going to try to get out the remaining of this out, and then I'll put out a community post with the link for the playlist for this whole part, because it's been a while since parts 1 and 2. So I would actually recommend, if you've already seen parts 1 and 2, to rewatch them all, because this needs to be fresh in your mind so that it makes sense in the end. Whenever I bring this all together, it's going to make a lot of sense, and it's really part of the entire gospel. A lot of people know a few stories and things from the Old Testament, but knowing everything and putting it all together, it's going to make a lot of sense whenever I put everything in together, and I believe that it'll help you understand why Yeshua had to die, and what that all represents. So I will see you in the 4th video. Thank you, and have a good day.